morning, ladies and gentlemen. That sounds very weird to say right now, but we are recording Thursday morning, 10:48 a.m. in beautiful Houston, Texas. How you doing? I'm your host, Zoe. For today, Esteban and Angel are not with us for today, but hey, show must go on. And also, the Astros finally sign a starting pitcher, which I think a lot of people don't didn't seem that this was going to be the first guy off the board. And really, honestly, he's the first guy off the board of MLB free agency. We'll talk about him in just a minute. Prospects just doing really well in the Arizona Fall League. George Springer, what a miraculous home run. Probably going to be going down in Blue Jays history as one of the best home runs in postseason history. Of course, Joe Carter's is like number one on the list. It shouldn't be without a doubt. And we'll have a little World Series prediction, of course, and we'll throw in the Jeremy Peña as well, becoming American League Louisville Silver Slugger award winner at his respective position at shortstop. But before we get started, make sure at the bottom, this is the new setup and everything. This is what we're going to be trying to do for this season. We have our title, everything at the bottom, Astros sign starting pitcher. At the very, very bottom, where like the ticker, I guess you can say, is you have our social media where you can find us and where you can listen to us as well. But I'll just say it real quick: Twitter, X, wherever you see us, Full Steam Ahead. Full Steam Ahead on TikTok, FSA, Full Steam Ahead on Instagram. And of course, our YouTube channel is always there at Full Steam Ahead. So make sure you go hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so you won't miss any interviews for the upcoming offseason that we got planning so far. And of course, if you're on the road, you're heading on a road trip, on a family vacation, or you just want to hit us on your commute to work or coming out of work, we are right there as well with Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. We are there. But like I said, we have a little new setup going on. We're going to put the objectives a little bit more on, I guess this is on my right side, but it looks on the left side on the TV screen. But yeah, we'll have our objectives right there. First one going to be Astros sign Nate Pearson. That has been official. And Nate Pearson is a former first rounder. And I don't know if a lot of people knew that in 2017, former first rounder from the Toronto Blue Jays, 27th overall pick of that draft. But the Astros hadn't mentioned it on Tuesday, and I'm going to just read what they had put out there. The Houston Astros have signed right-handed pitcher Nate Pearson, 1-year major league contract. Astros general manager Dana Brown announced Tuesday. And this was an interesting signing because you were expecting big player names. You were expecting the Jesus Luzardos. You were expecting, who else? The Zach Gallons. You were expecting the Dylan Cease. And what Dana Brown did, because of course the season's not officially over yet because of the World Series happening, he decided to just go and get a low-end, under the radar, I guess you can say, starting pitcher. And really, he's been a pitcher for both sides. He's been the bullpen. He's been a starter. And last year with the Chicago Cubs, he spent some time with AAA Iowa. Of course, that's what their affiliate team is. And of course, the Chicago Cubs as of last year. I'm going to read some of the stat numbers from AAA and being with the Cubs. In 38 appearances with the Iowa Cubs, he only had one start. 44 and 2/3 of innings pitched, had a 2.22 ERA, 11 earned runs, 57 strikeouts, a 114 whip, a 175 opponent batting average, and 7 saves. So that doesn't sound bad, honestly. It sounds really nice against the opponent batting average that stacks up to be in play. Of course, his ERA's below 2, almost mid 2, but right at the threshold of being 2.25 to 2 ERA. But with the Chicago Cubs, it was a different story. 11 appearances, 0-1 record, 14 innings and 2/3 pitch, a 9.20 ERA, and giving up 15 earned runs. So that doesn't sound very sexy if you're a Nationals fan thinking like, okay, well, why we're going to go get this guy if he presented these numbers? Not to mention, too, he was released by the Cubs on September 21. And honestly, I see this as a low risk, high reward. You see what the kid had when he was a number one prospect with the Blue Jays. When he came up to the league too, had a dominant fastball. If you go look at his highlights, fastball is heavily thrown in each start. But yeah, I'll talk about his 4-pitch mix since I'm right here. I'm talking about his 4-seamer. I have said the four seamer. He has a slider, curveball, sinker. But when you look at his starts, he's gonna heavily rely on the four seamer and the slider. He's hardly threw the curveball, and he's hardly threw the slider. I got the numbers right here. Really, 14 pitches thrown last season was a curveball. 7 pitches were thrown as the sinker. So if you're a Nationals fan, you're thinking like, hey, you gotta up your mix a little. You just can't heavily think you're a four seam slider kind of guy. But I do in my head, why I know why he just threw four seamers and sliders because you're coming out of the bullpen. And even Nate Pearson said himself on the Crush City Territory podcast with Chandler Rome and Tyler Stafford yesterday. They had a nice interview with him. And he said, hey, I'm just going out there with my best pitches because I'm not going to go out there and throw 2, 3, 4+ innings. He's just going out there doing his job, just getting whatever he can. He's going to throw his best pitches. And right there and then it was really the four seamer and the slider. But the fastball velo is really nice. Like I was mentioning earlier, 93 percentile on Baseball Savant, averages 97.6 miles per hour. So the stuff, at least the velocity of that pitch is still there. He could top at 100 too if he really wanted to. And like I said, Crush City Territory had him on their podcast, and what Pearson had to talk about was his why he chose Houston. And this is a quote from the podcast of Crush City Territory, and it says Pearson on what made him join Houston, and I quote, "They're giving me the opportunity to start again, and I thought that was very interesting. I've always wanted to get another opportunity because I feel like with the Jays, I kind of battled through some injuries and kind of just went out and signed guys and filled the rotation, and it kind of just I had to be in the bullpen, so I was looking for that opportunity, and I think the Astros were gonna be a perfect fit." And Chandler had asked him to, or Tyler, one of the guys had asked him to, like if he had any other offers besides Houston coming into free agency, and he said, yeah, he honestly did. But the main thing for him was becoming a starter, getting that opportunity again to be at that top pitcher that he was in the beginning of his career. And that's what he wanted. A lot of these teams were giving him relieving jobs, being out of the bullpen. But Houston and Dana Brown had came up to him and offered him, hey, if you want to start, we're giving you this opportunity. We do have some guys that are hurt. We do have some guys that's still on our roster that's going to be in the rotation. But hey, we're giving you the opportunity. You have a time to get going right now. So when it comes to spring training, you're fighting for a starting spot in that rotation. So another thing that helped him on choosing Houston was because Pearson saw the opportunity with the Astros and saw what Houston was able to do with their pitching development. And of course, Astro fans, numerous Astro fans, if you don't know, or even baseball fans in general, just know how Houston is when it comes to developing pitchers and getting the best out of them. We've seen it from honestly all the way from 2017. We saw it from Charlie Morton. We saw it from Garrett Cole. We saw it from Yusei Kikuchi. We saw it from Justin Verlander. Of course, Verlander was already successful with the Detroit Tigers, but same time too. I mean, if you want to get better, you got to learn sometime. And of course, he's still a student of the game. So those guys, I'm pretty sure I'm missing some. Wade Miley was another guy, and he saw the success that these starting pitchers were having. And of course, recently was Yusei Kikuchi. If everybody remembered at that deadline, Jake Bloss, Joey Luperfido, and Will Wagner for Yusei. And Yusei had a 4 something, probably a 4.5, 4.3 ERA in when it came to the trade deadline. And of course, Astro fans weren't looking for that type of guy. They were looking for the guys like I mentioned before, Dylan Cease, who's still on the trade target around. And you know what? Dana Brown's like, you know what? We're going to take a chance. I have so much confidence and capability of our pitching staff, our pitching department, and how they develop our pitchers. So he said, you know what? Let's go take that chance. Let's take that trade because if we want to win now, we need to get a starting pitcher. So sure enough, got Kikuchi. And honestly, he probably one of the best pitchers in the down stretch of that season, of the second half of that season. Because, I mean, he was undefeated. I think he was like 9-0. And then the last game of the regular season, he took a loss. And it was like 9-1 with the under 2 ERA for damn sure. He pitched really well. So Pearson saw how dominant that that run of Kikuchi was, and that's one of the things he had discussed with general manager Dana Brown, and even Brown had even told him too that the Astros believe they have some ideas for Pearson, and of course, when you're a free agent, you hear that, and that kind of like rings your bell because if you're going to sign a 1-year contract, you're betting on yourself to get better at this season. So when your contract ends at the end of the 26th season, you're hitting free agency again. It's either two things that the Astros can do, and it just depends on if Pearson's doing well. You can re-sign the kid, or Pearson's going to go test free agency and go get more buck for his money. So I think it's a good situation for both sides. One being for Pearson, he's coming out and trying to get that opportunity again to start, try to prove that he's still a good starter and that he could be put in position to start some games for your team. And of course, for the Astros, you need some depth in this rotation. This is not going to be your 1-2 pitchers that's coming out of the offseason. I'll tell you that right now. This is just mainly for some depth for this because you remember last season, trade deadline, Astros went offensive heavy. Jesus Sanchez, Ramon Urias, Carlos Correa. They didn't get a pitcher. Well, you saw how that kind of backfired on Dana Brown and the Astros because they thought, well, they didn't think, but they knew that Luis Garcia was going to come back, that Christian Javier was going to come back, JP France. You had reinforcements basically coming back into this rotation. But it kind of backfired. Javier did miss one start. His velocity, too, was a tick down. Luis Garcia had 3-4 couple starts. And then all of a sudden, came out of the game against the Blue Jays with an injury. You do not like to see that. Diagnosis, another Tommy John surgery. He's probably, in my opinion, I don't think he'll be in an Astros uniform coming next year. And he'll probably be non-tendered. And then JP France, I don't even think you saw France pitch a start with the Astros this season. But I think he was out of the bullpen for at least 1 or 2 games. Main point right there is he wasn't heavily used. Lance McCullers Jr. came back out of injury, pitched, wasn't really pitching well. Injury again, pitched again, injury. I mean, the cycle of Lance of being injured and pitching, that came again this season. So Pearson is more of a depth for your rotation, just in case. Because, 2, the Astros for sure know they have Hunter Brown coming back next year. You have Christian Javier. Hayden Wisniewski, Tommy John. So he won't be back at least mid part of the season. Same goes for Ronel Blanco. Same goes for Brandon Walter. So those guys, you're not going to see in the second half. Lance McCullers, if everything goes well, he joins with Hunter Brown and Christian Javier. Another guy, too, to be on the eyes on is Spencer Rigetti. We haven't had any news how his treatment has been, if he needs any surgery, if he's throwing the ball. I mean, we have no news on that. So that's something to kind of keep your eye on for the future of this offseason, because if something was to happen, like if he did need to get surgery, then he's not going to be on track to be ready for spring training, in my opinion, or I'm just speculating, or the regular season. So I believe this signing is just for depth purposes. You're going to have you're probably more than likely going to get some starters via trade, via, signing in the offseason, the baseball winter meetings. Of course, there's already been some ties. John Heyman had mentioned yesterday that the Astros could be a good fit for Mackenzie Gore. And I think that would be a perfect fit too for Houston, because if you're going to lose Framber Valdez coming into this offseason, and like I said, and we've talked about on the show, more than likely, I don't think Framber Valdez is going to come back in the Astros uniform. I think Angel was the only one that believes that Framber could come back. But if Framber Valdez doesn't come back, you're going to have a all right-handed starting rotation. Nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But you would like to have it with at least one left-handed pitcher in that rotation. Another guy to go with Hunter Brown. Of course, we've talked about trade pieces out there. You have Joe Ryan that's out there. You have Sonny Gray that's still out there, but they're going to be costing at a steeper price. I've talked about Pablo Lopez as well. But then you look at the free agents that are on the board: Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. The list goes on and on. So I believe this is not the Houston's 1-2 starting pitchers. If it is, they're rolling the dice with Pearson. But in my opinion, I think Pearson is kind of the guy just to be on the depth chart. He's gonna get some. He's gonna get some time, and especially too at spring training. He's gonna have to show right there and then that he is a proven starter. That Dana Brown didn't just waste a little bit of money just to go out there and get him. He put his full confidence in this kid. Reminder too, Chandler made a good point about this, that Dana Brown during his tenure with the Blue Jays was one of the guys that had scouted and drafted Nate Pearson. So he has a a connection with this kid, and he has some faith and he has some belief in him that he can be the guy to help this team get to where it needs to be as well. Just in case, like I said, some of these stars might not be able to come back. You're gonna have guys like Wisniewski, you're gonna have Blanco, you're gonna have um, Brandon as well come back. But saw how last season turned out for the Astros. Some of them guys didn't come back really impactful and strong. So Brown's just keeping it undercover, just trying to have him be under the radar for these teams. That I like I said, I think this is a good pick for Houston, a good signing, but I don't think the Astros are done yet. I believe that they're still going to go out there and try to get one or two starting pitchers via trade or signings in the offseason. So we saw the positives of seeing his four pitch mix, high velocity fastball, has a great sinker movement, not sinker movement, slider movement, and former number one draft pick, high end prospect. Kid has some electric stuff. So what's kind of the down thing about this kid? So I had to dig a little bit deep. And if we look at his splits between right-handed and left-handed hitters, left-handed and right-handed, they're the same with the fastball and the slider usage last season. Right-handers were 53%, sliders were 40%, left-handed hitters were 51%, sliders were 41%. So it wasn't no drastic difference. I didn't put the sinker or the curveball on there because, like I said, he hardly used that pitch. Why am I going to put it on there? He did mention on his interview, though, with Chandler that his sinkers were used mainly to righties. That's kind of a new pitch that he's still working with. But yeah, he's still working with that. Of course, you've seen Houston have success with these sinkers. We saw Framber Valdez. Of course, it didn't. This season really didn't plan out very well for him, but the sinker usage, you saw how heavily it was on him. You saw Hunter Brown use it in his arsenal this past season, and it looked very dominant on the mound. You even could say this the same for second half of the season. His sinker looked good. So, in my opinion, I think Houston and this pitching department has something on this sinker that's going to tell Pearson to throw a little bit more this season. Of course, maybe even in this offseason right now, it's probably telling him, hey, that's what I was talking about earlier with Dana Brown and the Astros had shared some ideas. They're probably going to share one of those ideas with him saying, hey, got a good sinker, kind of mess with it in the offseason, throw it, see what kind of movement it has. And then when it comes to spring training, all hands on deck. They're going to see what that pitch is all about. They're going to see all that movement and all that stuff. So got carried away with that. But beginning of his career, strikeout percentage. Like I said, when you throw a heavily high dose of fastballs, especially that are averaging about 97 to 101 on the radar gun, best believe you're going to throw that pitch. That might be honestly your put away pitch for some pitchers. And it was one of the best. He had a high strikeout percentage from 2020. Looking back, 19.8, and then it went all the way up. And it was trajectorying all the way up to the 20%. 2021, he had a 28.2%. 2023, he had a 23.6%. And in 2024, he had a 26%. So that's what the Astros have seen with this kid. He has the stuff. He has the strikeout mix. The K per 9 innings are going to be high for him. It's just command. That's another thing with Nate Pearson. Last year's strikeout percentage, and this is the ratio for him in 2025, was favored to walks. 9.3% were strikeout percentage. The walk percentage was 13.3. So you saw right there, and just listening to it, I know you can't physically see it, but me telling you that number, two different numbers right there, that walk percentage is very high. And what causes walks? It's your command. Your mechanics, I'm pretty sure they're looking into that as well. But if he could get his command down, by all means, this kid could be very something special. And last but not least, I had already mentioned how many times he threw the sinker and the curveball this season. I mean, this past season, and the vertical movements of his pitches on these two specifically are very not well when it came to the fastball and the sinker, the slider mix. Damn, I keep saying sinker, but curveball and sinker vertical movement was in the negatives last season and were very ineffective last year. Like I said, 14 pitches for the curve, 7 in the sinker. Very had more confidence in his slider and his fastball mix. When you think of fastball and slider, you think of Ryan Presley with the Astros. But the bullpen especially had a very heavy dose of the sliders, a really good slider, not to mention. And of course, you have the four seamer that he can try to punch it away with in that position. But like I said, those were some negatives. This is the biggest one for me for Houston because last year the Astros led Major League Baseball, and I'm not being biased here, with a bunch of injuries. Houston could not get out of that injured bug for some reason. They just couldn't stay healthy. And for Nate Pearson, for him especially, and like he had mentioned it on his quote with why he chose Houston, he had mentioned, hey, not Baltimore, Toronto was looking into that win now mode. They were signing guys that's going to help this rotation. Of course, they wanted Pearson to be that guy too because he was the top prospect. He played in the MLB futures game. He was a high regarded guy on the MLB pipeline, top 100 prospects. They had so much faith in this kid. Some could run away with the pressure, some can't. I think Nate honestly could run away with the pressure and do very well. But something like that, it happens. Injuries happen. And this is a little history of his injury from 2017, but it started in 2018. Looking back in his career, 2018, I have it right in front of me. Opened the season on the disabled list, which is now the injured list, with an oblique injury, then suffered a fractured right forearm after being hit by a line drive. Of course, that's bad luck at that timing, just as Spencer Rigetti. So didn't pitch in 2019. 2020 suffered a flexor strain in his elbow. And that was in the beginning of the season of his MLB debut. 2021 missed most of the season with groin injuries and a sports hernia. 2022 missed the entire season due to a latch strain. And 2024, he pitched healthy. Yeah, he was healthy. Pitched from May all the way to the end of the season. So that's another thing with Houston. Last year, the Astros saw an abundance of injuries from starting pitching to positional players, and you sign a guy like this that has an injury history, honestly, and you're hoping that he could come into spring training healthy. You're hoping he can pitch in spring training healthy. You're honestly putting the chips on the table for this kid to be 100% going into uh, the regular season because reminding y'all, he did sign a major league contract, so he is under the Astros, not a minor league, which would be with the Space Cowboys or the other minor league affiliates. So for Houston, they're really betting on him to stay healthy. This kid has the injury history, but even Pearson himself, he has to find a way to stay healthy. Coming from your diet, looking at your mechanics from your arm slot, because that main comes from a main effective, his extension, which when you mean by extension, Lorenzo, well, hey, that's when you're on the mound, on the pitching rubber, you're extending all the way with your leg, with your front foot, your back foot, see how far you can get to home plate. So for Pearson, he has to stay healthy. That's the only way this contract is going to work for both him and Houston. If he can stay healthy, then he's going to be just fine, and he'll be even better if he pitches really well for Houston this season. If he can do that, this is a great signing, and I think it's already a good signing. I'm not saying it's great because, like I said, I've already listed some of the things for y'all. Can he stay healthy? Can he throw a little bit more of this sinker and curveball mix? Because the fastball and slider, in a start especially, you just can't depend on two pitches. You really could, but you're going to have to also throw in another pitch here and there. You're going to have to throw, some type of off speed. Of course, your slider has been working, but hey, who doesn't like a good old fashioned 12-6 curveball coming at you like a Clayton Kershaw? Who doesn't like a sinker coming at you that looks like it's coming down the middle and then inside on your knees. So that's the main concern for me for Houston is can he stay healthy? Can he develop those pitches more often with the sinker and the curveball? And last but not least, command. Can he get his command down? The walks last year to strikeout ratio wasn't pretty. Of course, from years prior to that, it looked decent. But last year, and we're still in 25. You're going into 26. You got to get that down. So can he get the walks down? Can he get the command down? Mechanics going well. Number one. Number two, can he stay healthy? Number three, can he use these pitches of being a curveball and a sinker in his arsenal? Can we see that a little bit more? Because, like I said, four-seam fastball looks really good. Velocity's there. Slider, great movement as well. But what makes a dominant starting pitcher, you have your other pitches in your mix that you can throw in your start. And that is the curveball and the sinker. So we'll have to see how it goes for the Astros, of course, signing Pearson. Now the Astros have a full 40-man roster. The Astros will have to wait till the well, they're already in the offseason, but going down to the baseball winter meetings and when it comes to arbitration hearings and all that great baseball money stuff, it goes right there and then. But let's move on to some prospects that are shining in the AFL. And literally, some Astro players are headlining the AFL. If you don't know what AFL is, it is not nothing with football. It is not nothing with football. Let's get that out the way. AFL stands for Arizona Fall League, and it's a bunch of prospects that go out there and just try to get better, in their game. Of course, the minor league season comes to an end, and some players will, take the minor league season off and have a good off season. Of course, they're going to do their own personal workouts and work out here and there. You also have the other route of going to a different country and playing some winter ball. You saw that last year with Bryce Matthews. You saw that last year with Zach DeZenzo, and it really paved off for both those guys. DeZenzo looked really good in the beginning of the season, as well as Bryce Matthews getting the call up to wear an Astros uniform, and you saw the bang that he did in Arizona, 2 home run game from the kid. So these kind of help these prospects get better at their game, what they could do better. Of course, you have your organization telling you too as well what they would like for you to work on. Of course, with like last year, I'm going back to examples. Last year with Bryce, Espada and Brown wanted him to get some more at bats, just get some more ABs. I'm pretty sure the same thing for DeZenzo, but DeZenzo was a little different because the main focus was his defense. They wanted him to get related to being acquired to being the outfield. And of course, you saw him in left field majority of this season. You saw him even right field sometimes. But he went from an infielder because he was a shortstop at Ohio State and really an infielder for majority of his career. They transitioned him to an outfielder. So they wanted him to get some more reps in the outfield, get some, some looks in left field. Of course, being in the infield and the outfield are two different things. Of course, you got your backspin with left-handed hitters and right-handed hitters and all that good stuff. So you saw what they worked on. Well, these guys, I'm about to talk about, I'm pretty sure Brown and Espada had talked to these guys of trying to get, some more ABs, get some, looks from different pitchers. And I'm just going to say, because here we go. Arizona Fall League runs all the way to November 15. If you did not know that, this will go all the way to November 15. Some players will, depending on the organization, will tell their guys like, hey, this is it for this season. You're done for the AFL. Another example for that would be a high prospect over there in Texas, Sebastian Wilcott. I think he had dealt with a minor injury. It wasn't really nothing too serious, but Texas went ahead and shut the door on him, telling him, hey, no more. You've already done what we asked for you to do, but we'll have to just go out there and see. Greetings from Tepic, Nayarit, Mexico. Kevin, already in the offseason, I see. Live to see the podcast is still active, of course. Oh, well, he said love. He meant to say love to see the pod is still active. Yeah, if you want to interact, by all means. I know Kevin's one of the guys that likes to interact on this pod. If you want to interact, by all means, we're open to comments, and we want to hear your thoughts on the signing of Nate Pearson. I know we've already just got off the topic, but if you want to have a little bit of something saying about him, by all means, put your input in there. Some of the Arizona Fall League prospects I'm be talking about for Houston, put your input on them. What do you think? George Springer, of course, we have a little bit coming up, and World Series predictions. put them predictions there if you would like. But going back into the AFL, like I was saying, it gives your prospects a better chance, and it doesn't have to be high prospects; it can be low prospects, like out of the top 30. It can even be above from top 15 to top 30, top 10 to top 30. But I mean, you're going to see your number ones, you're going to see your number two prospects from other organizations out there. But for the Astros, they don't have a number one, they don't have a number two. They do have a number four. They have a number four, number six, and number seven. And we're going to start off with the kid that signed from Venezuela. Not a lot of money, too, not to mention the international pool signings. And it's Anderson Brito. I mean, he pitched really well in High Asheville for the Astros affiliate team. And for him, he really hasn't pitched since June 21. Of course, during that time, he had a stress reaction in his right shoulder. So the Astros went ahead and even the Asheville tourists had said, hey, we're going to shut you down for the season. Of course, we don't want it to be something major. I'm pretty sure he was rehabbing at the time to get, ramped back up and, start pitch again. But his first start, I mean, not a bad start. 2 2/3, 2 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. As of right now, he has a 1-0 record with a 3.18 ERA, which is a 3.18 ERA. And of course, it wasn't a bad first start. You're getting your feet wet. You haven't pitched since June 21st. Not to mention, like I said, you haven't pitched since the summertime. And you come back in your second start, which was last Friday. I'm pretty sure he might have a start today on Thursday, October 23rd, or it might be tomorrow, depending what I think they're Scottsdale Scorpions this season. The Astros are with, depending on what they decide, the manager who he has to start. I think it might be Brito today and tomorrow, but we'll have to see. But going back to what I'm saying, second start, this kid was electric. 3 innings, and I have a video here to show y'all and it's kind of a little blurry, so by all means, sorry about the video quality, but just to show you what his stuff is. I mean, this kid looked really electric out there. 3 innings, no hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. 8 strikeouts in 3 innings is very impressive. Because how many outs is in 1 inning? It is 3 outs. 3 innings, that equals 9 outs. 8 strikeouts from this kid. Of course, he did give up 2 passes, and that was in the beginning of that start. I believe it was in the first inning. Yeah, if you can see right there on the little score bug, it has the top of the first. So that was in the first inning. But just to add a little bit more of what Anderson Brito did, he struck out 7 consecutive batters. That's very impressive. That's very hard too. I mean, even the minor leagues, that's very hard to just get a guy out consecutively, with a strikeout, with a punchy. And he did that for 7 consecutive batters, and it's showing you right here on the video. But Brito did end up with 8 total strikeouts, like I said. It is the most in a single AFL appearance this season. Of course, the Astros had to show out, and who showed out in that? And it was Anderson Brito, topped out at 98.9 miles per hour. So this kid has a very good high velocity fastball. And guess who was behind the plate for his start in this, and at least I know for sure in the first one as well, but behind the plate for this one. And it was Astros number 4 prospect, Walker Janek. Walker Janek, of course, was drafted by the Astros in 2023. I'll even play the video one more time for everybody who had missed it. He was drafted by the Astros out of Sam Houston State. Go Bearcats, who, if you're any Bearcat fans out there. And I just want to pull up his Baseball Savant page because I did not see his pitch mix. Of course, I know he has a 4-seamer. I believe he does have a changeup too, if I'm not mistaken. He has a fastball, a curveball, a slider, changeup. So he has a 4-pitch mix. And like I said, the Astros signed this kid out of Venezuela for $10,000. $10,000 from Venezuela in November 2023 when it came to that time. And this past season in Asheville, this was his first professional, debut of having MLB, at least Major League, as something like that. Like a Major League debut. Sorry about that. And I mean, not MLB debut, but something MLB has something like that that shows like it's like your professional debut of minor league ball, and it was with Asheville because of course you're coming from the Florida Coast League FCL, and then you got to make your way up to single A, high A, and then obviously double A, triple A, and all that good stuff. But had a good feel of his slider. He had a good feel of his changeup. I don't know if you saw some of these matchups that he was pitching against. And let's see on this next one which pitch he does throw. So that looked like a slider right there. And for him, I think he's just trying to get better. And look, that's a curveball right there. That was a little good old 12-6. But back to what I was saying, Walker Janek was behind the plate for his start, and even Walker too in Asheville. They're battery mates. They have been catching with one another from Asheville, and this is what Janek had to say on Brito's second start. Quote: "The fact that he can throw anything in any count," Janek said. "Back there, you have unlimited options of what you can do. One of the best pitchers I've ever caught. He's got the grossest stuff. Really good." So it's nice to see that battery still stay intact for Houston, having Yannick and Brito. I'm wouldn't be surprised. Brito is more than likely going to be a starter in Double A this upcoming season for the Corpus Christi Hooks. Walker Yannick potentially could be another guy too that can go up to Corpus as well with Brito. But Brito, I mean, you've seen the success how Houston have with these pitchers coming out of the international pool signings. You saw it with Jose Urquidy. You saw it with Luis Garcia. You saw it with Christian Javier. I mean, you've seen the success. Framber Valdez is another one. And honestly, this is where Houston cooks, in my opinion, a lot of getting players. It's the international pool signings. Because, of course, remember, 2017 cheating scandal, they took in MLB took away the Astros first and second round picks of 2 years. And I believe that was 2020 and 2021. Yes, correct. 2020 and 2021. So, the Houston Astros had to figure out a way how they can get some type of draft assets to help this team. To get the farm system, because everybody knows it's no secret out there. The Astros farm system isn't a strength. It is not a strength. It's always ranked 29, 30 and all that. But hey, when Houston calls some guys up, they come and produce. You saw it with Colin Gordon last year. You saw it with AJ Blueball, which I would love to talk some AJ Blueball action, but we're not going to do it today. We're a little bit short on time with that. We'll probably talk about that here in the latest podcast. But little keynote I would like to throw out there. I do think he should have a chance of having a starting spot in this rotation coming next season. Throwing out there. But moving on from Blueball. Who else? I mean, you saw Brandon Walter. He didn't pitch a lot with the Red Sox, but he did pitch with Houston a lot. You saw that success. But we're talking about farmhouse names. Like I said, I think it's good for them to go out there and produce, not to mention Tuesday, MLB Pipeline and the Arizona Fall League named Brito the Arizona Fall League Pitcher of the Week. So this is a good sign for Houston to see more pitching assets coming up in your rotation. If I'm not mistaken, too, I think this is the number one pitching prospect in their farm system. Do not quote me on that, but I believe so. So it's nice to see that he's getting some work out there. He's really pitching well. Another guy, like I was mentioning, that is not a pitcher, but had success this AFL so far is number 4 prospect, Walker Janek. And I want to reiterate what I had mentioned and want to apologize. It was a 2024 Astros draft pick. 2023 was Bryce Matthews. 2024 was Walker Janek. So my mistake on that. But Janek, I mean, he's a guy that Houston believed that in a hitting catcher. He has wheels. You saw the pop time too. If you look at his scouting report, has a great pop time, has good arm strength as well, has a great offensive bat, and he has some wheels. Do not sleep on the wheels, like Stebby said with Victor Caratini. Well, don't do the same thing with Walker Janek. So through 8 games so far, Janek slash line is a 303 batting average, 361 on base percentage, 667 slugging, 10 hits, 3 doubles, 3 home runs, including 1 grand slam, 18 RBIs, and 3 stolen bases, not to mention a 128 OPS. So this kid is seeing the ball very well. And if you look at his hits, I mean, 10 hits, 6 of them being extra base hits with 3 doubles and 3 home runs. And like I said, Friday's game with Brito on the mound, Walker also had a hell of a game. That was the grand slam with 4 RBIs, and I believe he tallied 7 RBIs. Yeah, 7 RBI performance in Friday night's game when Brito went out there and threw 7 consecutive. Well, Walker's like, you know what? If you're throwing 7 consecutive strikeouts, you might as well give me some RBIs. Finished the night with 7 RBIs. But very exciting to see how he comes out. And this is where we were talking about with the Victor Caratini situation and the Yainer Diaz. And that was one of my hot takes. If you trade Yainer Diaz, you get some prospects back, or you get an MLB ready player now, which I would highly doubt, but more likely prospects. You re-sign Caratini, you possibly get another backup catcher, and or either you get another backup catcher or you bring up Walker Janek. And like Angel had mentioned, he made a great point. Houston has shown, and specifically Dana Brown, he's not afraid to bring up guys from the farm. He's not afraid to get these guys from the minor leagues and say, "Hey, come on, you're coming up." You saw that with Zach Cole. You saw that with Bryce Matthews. You saw that with Colton Gordon. You saw that with Ryan Gusto. You saw that with AJ Blah. I mean, the list goes on. He did that a lot of times this season, of course, because Houston had dealt with a lot of injuries, but showed out right there and then that, hey, we need some arms, we need some young energy, some fresh names to come up. And sure enough, that's what some of these guys did. You saw how Zach Cole performed in the beginning. You saw how Bryce Matthews performed in the beginning, as well as AJ Blueball. So with Walker, I don't think he's MLB ready right now, but he will be in the future. He's just not right now. I said, give me another year or two, more than likely 2 years, and you could see Walker Janek come as the Astros either starting catcher or just going to be behind Yainer Diaz, depending on what Houston decides to do with Yainer. Just depending too what if Houston re-signs Victor coming into this offseason. More than likely, you could see a 2-year deal with either a player option or a club option, because I do not see, excuse me, I do not see Houston signing him for 3 years. If they do, then by all means they sign for 3 years. But more than likely for that, I think he'll probably do another 2-year deal, probably a little bit more money, because he did sign for, if I'm not mistaken, 12 million for 2 years with the Astros 2 off seasons ago. He was getting 60 million AAV wise. So Walker Yawning could be a guy to just keep your name, keep him under the radar, keep watching him perform. If you're into prospects, and this is a great opportunity to look at the Arizona Fall League, see what Houston has with him, with Anderson Brito, and another kid we're about to talk about in Joseph Sullivan. I mean, this is where you see where the Astros are. You saw Bryce played in it, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago. I know there was another player that had played in it for Houston last season. Can't remember who it was. Um, Kennedy Corona is another kid that had played in this league. But you got guys like Brady Montgomery, like I had mentioned, Sebastian Welcott. You top end prospects, Cade or Cave Smith. I think it's Cade Smith for the Yankees. So a lot of prospects out there to show what the future looks like. Of course, you probably looking at the World Series right now. There were probably prospects playing the AFL during that time, and now look where they're at. So just to show you how this AFL goes. And last but not least, we're not going to talk too much about this kid, but Joseph Sullivan, number 6 prospect in the Astros farm system, wasn't really supposed to play in the AFL after the minor league season. That spot was originally supposed to go to Zach Cole, but Zach got his name called up from Dana Brown this September to make an appearance in the regular season. So Joseph was able to take over Zach's spot, and through 6 games, he's looked really nice too. I mean, 348 batting average, 448 on base percentage, 435 slugging, 883 OPS, 8 hits, a triple, 6 RBIs, 4 walks, 4 stolen bases. So obviously the power isn't on there. You do not see that, but you see a lot of on base percentage. You see the batting average that's very high. You see the walks, the play disciplines there. The stolen bases, very active on the base pass, of course, with that triple, not to mention. So you're going to get some speed out of him. You're going to get some contact out of him. And if you remember, Joseph Sullivan was called up to Double-A last year for the Hooks, and the late part of the season, if I'm not mistaken. And the Astros had contacted him about, taking over Zach Coe's spot. So, like I mentioned, the organization goes out and tells you, hey, we would like for you to work on this. We would like for you to work on that. And the Astros had told Sullivan that they wanted him to work on his arm strength. Reminder to everybody, if you do not know where his position is, he is an outfielder. He could play center field. He could play left field. He could play the center field or the corners, is what I like to say. So Houston wanted him to get his arm strength back on track to kind of get a little bit stronger. Maybe even the throws to the plate on point, maybe work on some of those. Um, but he also had mentioned, this was coming in Brian McTaggart's article, the number 6 prospect wanted to work on some swing changes because when he was going to Corpus, he was working on some swing changes on his bat path. Of course, some players are taught to lift the ball a little bit more. Some come at an angle. You also have that chop. If you've played in baseball, you've heard those antics. And like I was mentioning, Sullivan was working on some swing changes when he was promoted to Double A, and more than likely, he's probably still working on it over there. And maybe he did work on it at the end of the season. He finally got a little, taste of it. And he got used to it, and now it's coming into the AFL. And right now, he's honestly slashing really well. Like I said, for a kid like this, of course, the slugging's not going to be high because you're not a high profiled power hitter. He's more of contact and speed. And right now, 348 batting average, 448 on base percentage, not bad at all. Not bad at all. The disciplines there is 4 walks, 4 stolen bases, a triple, 6 RBIs. So this kid's gonna continue to get better at his game, and just the rest of these guys. I mean, it's a good start for Houston prospects, at least in this AFL. Brito doing a really good job, and that second start phenomenally well done. Of course, Walker Janek, 1 grand slam with 7 RBIs to end that game. And then Sullivan just getting the opportunity to come in the AFL and producing really good numbers as an outfielder. And, offensively, when we're looking at it, and I don't have the defensive stats on me, but offensively, looking at these 2 guys, and of course, we already talked the pitching aspect about Brito. It's really good to see what the outfield looks like in the future because as of right now, what Houston has, Jacob Melton, you have Zach Cole, you have Jake Myers, you have Cam Smith. So very youthful in the outfield. If you want to put DeZenzo too, you can put DeZenzo out there as well. So it is very youthful in the outfield. You got some fresh young legs that will be fighting for a spot. We're not sure if Melton's going to get dealt it in a trade. We're not sure if Zach Cole's going to get dealt in a trade. Hey, you don't know. Maybe Jake Myers gets dealt in a trade. But just for the fact that Houston is getting these outfielders ready and prepared just in case their names are going to be called up anytime soon. Of course, getting that promotion from Double A to Triple A is going to be what Sullivan's going to be looking for. Like I said, with Brito and Yannick, their names are going to be hopefully starting in Double A with the Corpus Christi Hooks. So just something to radar throughout this whole AFL. Like I said, it doesn't end till November 15. And it'll tell you on MLB Pipeline when the guys are playing and the stats and all of that. So if you want to keep posted with these guys, beyond means, make sure you do that because this is the future of the Astros. Number 7 prospect in Brito, number 4 prospect in Yannick, and number 6 prospect in Sullivan. But let's move on to the final 2 with George Springer and the World Series predictions. My God, if you're a Houston Astros fan, how many times have you seen George Springer come up in some big game moments? Always comes in some type of big game moment. Of course, we could go back to 2017 being the farthest, most unbelievable postseason / World Series performance ever from George and really from an outfielder as well. Game tying home run against the Dodgers in Game 5 against Brandon Morrow, sent that to the game to the train tracks. Of course, if you really remember, before that, he did make an error. He dove too early for a ball, and it went all the way to the warning track. That was I think it was a Cody Bellinger triple. It was an RBI triple. So that situation, of course, nobody can forget Game 7. Game 7, George Springer, and that's why I said in my tweet, I put Game 7, George Springer is just different because when the games matter most, he comes up in big situations. And you saw that with Houston. And the Astro fans specifically, of course, this is an Astros podcast. You saw that numerous times. And he went out there and performed very well, getting the World Series MVP, obviously. But going now into the present with the Blue Jays. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he has 4 postseason home runs as of right now, and 3 of them, I want to say, was against the Mariners. And see, I'm not going to go into the Seattle fans and all of that. I'm not going to go into that. Of course, people probably would want me to, but I'm not. I'm not gonna. I'm very respectful. But with Springer getting hit in the knee, you saw the Mariner fans cheer. You even heard the coach and John Snyder came up to the podium and said, it's kind of crazy and unbelievably dumb that these fans, 40,000 fans, were cheering and booing for George when he got hit in the kneecap. And if you go look at the replay, you in the background where Springer's walking off into the dugout, you see some Mariner fans waving, you see some Mariner fans cheering, all the antics of the beautiful game of baseball. And it's always funny how this game comes. Baseball is a weird, crazy, spontaneous, fun game because the ball is going to find you no matter what. And 3-1, Mariners on top, 7th inning, 1 out, 2nd and 3rd. Who comes up? And it is George Springer. George Springer comes up. Dan Wilson brings in Bizzardo, which is a very questionable decision because, a lot of baseball people have been talking about it. When I saw it, I was like, why is Bizzardo in? Why are you not throwing your best guy and Andres Munoz and then figure out what happens in the next upcoming innings? But by all means, Wilson went with Bizzardo. And George, I think the first pitch, he fouled off his sinker. Bizzardo throws another sinker, and it just caught too much of the plate. George sits back, pops it, and into left field, into the glorious, beautiful night of Toronto, Canada. And sure enough, puts the Jays up 4-3, and that was enough for the Blue Jays to win Game 7 of the ALCS. So George Springer just coming up in big moments. Of course, had to bring it on there because you saw it as an Astros fan. And that's why I said, the Astros fan base is very spoiled because you've seen the golden era. You saw the core, and even all the way to now, what this team was able to do with George Springer, with Carlos Correa, with Alex Bregman, with Jose Altuve, and then comes up Yordan Alvarez, then comes up Kyle Tucker, then comes up Framber Valdez. Of course, we had Justin Verlander. You had to throw the names in there. And then, of course, Hunter Brown making his postseason debut. So Astro fans are very spoiled, and they've always – that's why when this season came to an end, a lot of Astro fans are like, man, what do we do? It's kind of like something new for them to see because Houston is always in the postseason. They're always in the hunt. They're always making a deep push for the ALCS or the World Series. So that's why I said you got to enjoy it now in the present. Just think it back when you look back at it, 8 years ago. My God, 8 years since the Astros has won their first World Series championship trophy in franchise history. You have to stay in the present and enjoy those moments with your loved ones, enjoy your moments with your friends, with coworkers, with other, peers out there, because it just goes like that. George is already 10 years of service in MLB. Honestly, actually, it might be more than that. He's 11 or 12 because he made his debut, if I'm not mistaken, in 14. So just throwing a shout out to Springer and that because, of course, these guys, Correa, Bregman, Altuve, wherever they go, they're going to get booed. They're obviously going to get booed away from their stadium. And Springer coming up in the biggest moment of that game. That's why I said the baseball always finds you. It always finds you. And having George do that for the Blue Jays haven't gone to a World Series since 1993. The Mariners still have yet to reach the World Series, but they would have won. That would have been their first World Series appearance. But it should be a good World Series matchup. Here come the predictions. I say, man, it's going to be, if the Blue Jays pitching staff can stay afloat with the Dodgers, I got Toronto. But, man, the Dodgers, their pitching staff's really well. You saw that with Blake Snell, how he's pitched. You saw it with Yamamoto, how he's pitched. Tyler Glass now. Shohei Ohtani's unbelievable performance, too, not to mention. You've seen how these guys pitch. So it's going to be tough. If like I said, if Toronto's pitching staff with Gossman, Barrios, if Barrios is able to play, um, Savage, which man, that kid is very electric. If you haven't seen him pitch, he is electric. Not to mention, um, who else am I missing? Shane Bieber's another guy. If I'm not mistaken, Chris Bassett could maybe get a start here. So if those guys can line up with the Dodgers pitching staff, then I'm all for Toronto. But looking at paper, the only weakness right now for the Dodgers is their bullpen. And what have the Blue Jays done really well this season? They've come back in some games. They led the league in, I think it was like 17 comebacks. I think Fox had it on their bug. 17 comebacks this year for the Blue Jays. And if the Blue Jays could get to their bullpen, which that could be in the 5th, that could be in the 6th, that could be in the 7th inning. If they could get to their bullpen, then by all means, I can see the Blue Jays. So it's gonna be tough, but I'll say in the beginning, I said in the beginning, in the very very beginning, if you follow me on Arskina, if you follow me on my Twitter too at Lorenzo Delgado, my last letter of the O is a 0. So if you want to go follow, by all means, go follow me. Hit me a little button. But I had the Dodgers and Red Sox in the World Series, and I had the Dodgers winning their second consecutive, being the first team since the Yankees did in the 2000s. However, this Blue Jays team has really shocked me. I didn't see this coming into the season. Ernie Clement has played really well this postseason. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. playing well as well, not to mention. But I got to go Dodgers in 7. I'll have to go Dodgers in 7. The Blue Jays is a really good team, but that pitching staff right now, that rotation for Los Angeles has been really deadly for other opposing teams. You saw them knock out a number 2 team in the Philadelphia Phillies, which have good pitchers in Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, Aaron Nola, all them guys. You see it. Then you go against the Brewers, the number 1 team in the league, in the National League. And you had to face Freddie Peralta. You had to go against Priester. You had to go against Jose Quintana. I'm not naming those guys. Them names do not stand like Cy Young names, but Peralta has been pitching well this season. But going out there, going against an offensive, really performing team in the Brewers and being able to shut them down. So that's why I think this honestly might be the first team to do it since the Yankees in the 2000s and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So if I had to pick, I got to stick with my gut. I got to stay with the Dodgers in 7. A lot of Astro fans are not going to be happy on that. If I lose some, if you hit that unfollow button, by all means, I understand. But yeah, that's my baseball take and my baseball instincts on that. So Dodgers in 7. And last but not least, to end the show, we'll end it on a positive, and of course, it has to be an Astro note. Louisville Slugger has announced that Jeremy Peña is a finalist for the American League Silver Slugger Award at shortstop. The names will be announced. The winners will be announced on November 7, 5 p.m. Central Time on MLB Network. And this was a guy, I told everybody, this was last season. He's going to hit over 300. Well, he didn't do it this season. Last season, but he did this season. Hitting over 300, had one of his best seasons ever. First-time finalist for the Silver Slugger Award. Led all American League shortstops with a 6.4 WAR. Of course, not to mention first career All-Star appearance, which was really cool for him and his family. Batted .304, 68 runs scored, 30 doubles, 2 triples, 17 home runs, 62 RBIs, 20 stolen bases, and 840 OPS. And ranked 5th among all major league hitters with a .304 batting average, not to mention. So, honestly, he should win it. The other 2 guys that are up for the award and shortstop at least is Bo Bichette from the Toronto Blue Jays and Bobby Witt Jr. from the Kansas City Royals. Bobby, a really great hitter. Same goes for Bo. I do think Peña does win this award above both those guys. If he led in WAR, especially in batting average too, wouldn't be surprised. But if he does win this award, he will join Dickie Thon. God, 80s kids, where are we at? 1983 as the only player in Astros history to win a Silver Slugger at shortstop. Because if you remember, Carlos Correa never had that opportunity to win it. Of course, if you're really from the 2000s era, Adam Everett wasn't able to do it. More Adam Everett was more of a defensive guru than a offensive uh, placement. So if you're an Astros fan, you're looking for Jeremy Peña to win that award at shortstop since 1983, since Dickie Thon. So very good season for him. And this was a really good episode. Not bad. And just over the hour mark. But we had a little good crowd today for being a Thursday morning. Not bad. It's going to be afternoon here in just a second. 11:48 a.m. in beautiful sunny Houston, Texas, which this weekend we are supposed to get some rain. My gosh, it's going to rain really bad. So make your plans, adjust your plans, not to mention. But if you weren't here at the beginning of the show, here at the bottom, it's kind of like a ticker style, like I had mentioned in the beginning. But at the bottom, you have our social media and our YouTube channel. I'll say it though, TikTok, we're at Full Steam Ahead, as well as on Twitter. FSA Full Steam Ahead on Instagram, and our YouTube channel, Full Steam Ahead, on there. If you're listening from a lot of our audience today is going from our Twitter base, but if you want to go and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, because we're going to try to get some interviews with some players and maybe some coaches as well in this upcoming offseason. Of course, the grind does not stop. We're going to be talking about arbitration hearings. We're going to be talking about free agents. We're going to be even grading how these players have played their position this season. A lot of good content, a lot of good stuff that we're going to try to do this offseason. And as well, you see on the bottom corner on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. If you have to be on the run, you can't see us on video on YouTube or X. We are on the audio platform. Like I said in the beginning of the show, you're heading on a road trip. You're heading to your commute to work, or you're coming back from work. You missed this morning's episode. We're gonna, as soon as this episode ends, we're gonna put it on and get everybody to that missed it. Hopefully, we'll be able to get on top of it. But wherever you get us, that's all our podcast platforms. Like, rate, leave a review, give us some stars as well. Give us some feedback how we're doing. But that is it for the show. Like I said, I appreciate everybody's time being able to be here with us. Well, be with me at least, and love the engagement. Kevin, I am not going for 2 hours. Thank God that is not happening today. But until then, hopefully we get Steban back. Hopefully we get Angel back on the pod so we can have our beautiful three faces on here and talk more about Astros baseball. But till then, maybe next week we'll have another podcast. We'll have to see how everything goes. Y'all have a safe weekend. Like I said, it's going to be very rainy in the Houston area. So when you're in Houston, please drive carefully. Please be safe. Friday Junior is here. Have a great weekend, like I had mentioned before. Be responsible, be safe, and till then, we'll talk to y'all soon.